Once again, I would like to welcome everybody to our March webinar in our partner series. And giving a talk today is Dr. Willie Hendrickson, President of IFPRI, the International Fine Particles Research Institute, and he will be talking to us about bringing industry and academia together to advance particle technology. Willie, take it away.
Well, thank you, Jeff, and welcome to everybody that's here today to hear about and learn about the International Fine Particle Research Institute. Many of you may have heard about the IFPRI, as we call it, but many of you haven't. So I'd like to start out and give you just a little bit of overview of why there is such an institute around. One of the things that kind of runs through all industrial manufacturing is particle science and technology is one of these tremendous technologies that is little understood, and it's in all industrial manufacturing. More importantly is that what people have found over the years is small changes in particle-related processes and properties can have just huge effects on productivity and profitability, and once again, those effects aren't necessarily well understood by everybody, and so people seem to be reinventing the wheel again and again and again. And this leads to the third point on this slide, is that realistically people are more concerned about the synthesis of their compounds or how to coat a material, and there's not a focus on particle technology, even though it can have these huge effects on productivity and profitability. So what happened, in 1979, 5 academicians, Bob Pfeffer, Kurt Lashansky, Professor Inouye, Professor Scarlett, and Frank Tiller, all got together and said, you know something, we can see that there's a lot of needs in industry. We need to have an organization that industry and academia can actually get together. So these 5 went to, and it turns out they talked to a person at DuPont and said, you know, this is a problem that we see in industry. We think that there should be a better way of bringing academicians and companies together. And Howard Turner at DuPont said, you know, I think you're right. Let me call up some of my friends and let's get together and have a meeting and discuss how we can best do this. Well, that actually turned out to be the first IFPRI meeting, and what you can see there, is actually the companies that Howard Turner brought together was quite a list of companies in 1979, from DuPont to Exxon to 3M to Eastman Kodak, got together and decided, let's put this together and find a way of getting academicians and companies together. And so what happened, maybe, why can't, you know, Jeff, why can't I move down? There it is. What happened is, understanding that there was this critical lack of fundamental particle understanding, a lack of forum for intercompany discussion, and a poor connectivity between universities and industry, these 5 professors and the 12 companies decided that they will start IFPRI to provide a venue for particle technology discussion. Now think about this. This is companies actually getting together and being able to talk among themselves and discuss what are the problems, what are the critical problems for that they're seeing in particle technology, and then take it a step further. The companies now, not the professors, decided that they would develop a strategic plan for particle science based on the needs of the industries, and actually then fund R&D programs on a pre-competitive basis. And so what I mean by that is there is never any intellectual property that is actually owned by IFPRI, but it still resides with the academic researchers, and the companies actually provide the focus and direction for the strategic plan and the actual projects that are going on. This was the observations and the mission that IFPRI originally started out to come up with, to try to address this area of particle science and technology. What they did in 1979 is they identified 5 areas in the technical program, or the 5 technical areas that IFPRI needed to focus on. Sols and dispersions, we typically call this the wet processing, dry powder flow or dry particle technology, size reduction, particle formation, and then combining and holding all of these together was the idea of let's focus on new methods of characterization and measurement. Now these are the programs that the companies came up with in 1979. And over the years, they've changed slightly, and there'd be a focus more on one area than the other area, depending on what the companies see as important. But the areas have basically stayed the same, and we have this, we believe, gives a great overview of particle technology and what is important in an industrial setting. Over the years, we always have a program that's set up that's based on these 5 areas. So you can see here in 2014 and 2015, we actually have 10 full proposal programs that we've gone out and identified high-level research associates around the world and asked them to do a project for IFPRI based on what we think is important. So to give you an example, Antonios Castellanos in University of Seville is looking at the effect of electrostatics on particle packing. And this is for how can you put more particles into a box, or how can you fit more particles into a tablet at the end of the day. Darrell Williams Professor Darrell Williams at Imperial College is looking at spray drying at high temperatures, because we're always interested in a particle technology, and spray drying is one of the formation technologies. Spray drying is one of the areas that the members feel is very industrially important. Other things that we've looked at, we have Professor Jin Oy at University of Edinburgh looking at grindability tests, because there's a lot of time and effort put in grinding materials, and the issue is how can we understand that better. So it's not necessarily a specific material or even a specific grinder or system, but it's understanding the fundamental characteristics of grindability and how to take better advantage of it. We have all of these programs here, and I'm happy if you have questions to ask about them, about the individual ones. But IFPRI, when we have our program, we also don't just focus on new projects that we're taking a long-term basis on, but we also every year have reviews. And so in 2014, 2015, we identified 3 reviews that we asked for. One for deliquoring of wet solvent cakes, one on the state of the art on drying technologies. Once again, this is a very important area in formation, and one on innovative non-mechanical milling. So what we'll have at our IFPRI meeting is we'll actually have 3 reviews. We might only have 2 this year, depending on if we find the right person to do a deliquoring one. But we'll have these reviews, which gives an idea of what's going on in the field, so we can pick the new projects going on in the future. I'd like to go back a little bit. I forgot to mention, when we determine that we want a program, for instance, once again going back to the Castellanos program, we actually fund this program for 3 years, and if we like the program at the end of 3 years, we'll renew it for 3 years. So usually every year there's 1 or 2 programs that are ending and 1 or 2 programs that are starting up. So we get a lot of ebb and flow on these things, and we give the professors long enough time to do the research, up to 6 years, and long enough for us to get some good information out of each one of the programs. Now, along with the full proposals and the reviews, every year we also consider the idea of a workshop. And a workshop is a 2-day addition onto our annual general meeting that focuses on one area. This year we're going to have one workshop. I think we've decided to wait on the particle technology for education, but we're going to do one workshop on crystallization, where we're going to be looking at the fundamentals of crystallization, and I'll show you that a little bit later on in the talk. Along with all of these, every year in the previous meeting, we also identify 3 or 4 areas, depending on where we're at, that we're looking for new proposals, and we call these the briefs, where we're asking for professors. We specifically determine specific professors that we ask for to give us a proposal on, in this particular case, molecular self-assembly, powder rheology, or physical and chemical characterization of powder surfaces. Those were the 3 briefs that we identified. We actually went out and asked for proposals in molecular self-assembly and powder rheology, and come at our next meeting, we will pick 1 or 2 of these programs to be new programs going forward. So we're always adding new programs. Now these will be programs that will go on for 3 years and maybe renewed for another 3 years. And once again, it's the companies that are deciding, is this important to all of us together to have a new area to be looking at research? So the membership in IFPRI is shown on this slide. You can see I've divided up the membership into some categories, from fine chemical to specialty chemicals to consumer goods. The top companies are up at the top. These are full member companies. DuPont, Unilever, Procter & Gamble. These companies have been members from the beginning of IFPRI's time when it was formed. Over the years, a new set of companies have come in. There's been some increase in pharmaceutical, where they're looking at more segregation, powder flow, how to make sure that you have a consistent formulation. But every one of these companies has an abiding interest in particle technology, and every one of these members sends 1 or 2 members to our annual general meeting every year to discuss what is the next direction that we're going to go into from a strategic standpoint. We also have associate members. You can see down in the bottom left-hand corner. These associate members are non-voting members of IFPRI, but they are also actively involved in particle technology and find that it's important for them to be at this meeting. And you can see at the bottom right-hand side, these are some potential new members that are actively right now considering joining IFPRI. The full membership for IFPRI is $30,000 a year. An associate membership is $10,500 a year. You know, in one sense, it's not very much for a big company. In another sense, it's always difficult to convince your management to contribute to this. But the reality is what one gets out of IFPRI is a tremendous understanding and a tremendous vision of particle technology and how it can help your company. So one of the things that we really consider is, what does IFPRI bring to the members? Well, every year we have an annual general meeting, and I'm going to talk about, you know, some of the specifics of what we do at the annual general meeting. This is where we talk about the strategic vision of where we think particle technology is going to go. We talk about what we think about the projects that have been going on. We talk about the business, and we look for new members at this annual general meeting. We have a winter business meeting once a year where we you know, bring ourselves up to date and make sure that halfway through the year we're in the right direction for what we're doing. But we also do quite a bit of discussion about new projects. You know, are they meeting our goals? You know, we talk about the briefs to make sure that the briefs are meeting our interests. Every year we have 8 to 10 annual research reports that the professors that we've engaged will report on the work that they've done, and those reports are available to the members. Over the years, we've had over 600 commission reports and reviews that are in our archives that are available to members. And so some of these reports are been done by the absolute leaders in particle technology. These reports are actually given to the members 1 to 2 years before they actually get published. So you get an advantage of being able to see this work early on. Every year, as I mentioned before, we have 2 to 3 reviews on an area of interest to our members. We have workshops, and most important at IFPRI in the annual general meeting, in the business meeting, and during the year, our members are talking to each other about particle technology. Appropriately talking. I mean, obviously, every member has a need to protect the intellectual property of their companies, but being able to call up a person that you've met at a meeting and say, you know, I have this problem in my spray dryer. Have you ever seen something like this? These sorts of discussions are going on quite a bit. It gives a whole new flavor and ability to move more rapidly and understand the field in general. This is one of the great deliverables to me over my career, is being able to talk to experts in the field, and not just academic experts, but industrial experts in the field, and get a better feel for particle technology.
Willie?
Every year our annual general meeting is yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Jeff?
Yes, so we had a question come in asking if you have to be a full member to get access to the reports.
No, that's a great question. If you're an associate member, you do have full access to the reports also.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Yep, and okay.
All right, I'll continue.
Yes,
Thanks for the question. Please ask more questions if you have them. Our annual general meeting is held usually at in the city of one of our academic researchers. So last year, Professor Oy hosted our meeting at the University of Edinburgh. And you see the picture up at the top here. This is the castle. We weren't having our meeting in the castle, but it was too good a picture in Edinburgh not to put the castle there. Next year, or this coming year, we're having our meeting at the University of Cornell, and this will be hosted by Professor Uli Wiesner and Professor Marty Murtaugh. And then finally, the following year, we will have our annual general meeting at the University of Surrey, and we're not really quite sure exactly where that's going to be, but usually it's at a nice hotel that gives us the ability to relax and have good interactions the whole time. Typically what we're doing is every other year we're in Europe, followed by United States. We appear to be getting more Japanese members, and we will probably have another IFPRI meeting, annual general meeting in Japan at some later date. At the annual general meeting, realistically, this is an intense 5-day meeting that starts out with our particle technology reviews. So we start out with, we've identified an area that we'd like a review on, we've identified a professor that is an expert in this area, and we ask for a review in the area. And that kind of gets us going to think about, you know, what should we be thinking about in particle technology. We then have project overviews by all the professors, where the professors are giving us the latest updates. After those reviews, or the project overviews, we actually evaluate the professors, give them our feedback, and ask them to change direction or tell them that they're going in exactly the right direction. Once again, this is a group where the industrial members are controlling what they get out of this. And we have actually had situations where the projects weren't going as we wanted, and we would then stop the projects even before the three-year time is. So I'm trying to emphasize how important it is for us as industrial members that we are actually the people that are in control of our own destiny. After we have our project overviews, one of the important parts of our meeting is to look and think about what will be the next area that we would like to fund. And we go into a fairly intense project brief writing where the members break up into small groups, try to figure and come together themselves with the idea of, is there an area that we should be funding? And so the idea is to identify this area, identify a proposed number of researchers that we could go and ask to consider writing a brief for us, and then ultimately, as I showed a couple steps down, we will actually vote on these briefs, and the members then decide which one of the briefs are the most important to the entire membership, which is once again very interesting. So you as a member have the opportunity to direct this work and actually get a value plus for the research dollars that you're putting into this. We also have what we call a Bob Pfeffer seminar series, and Bob Pfeffer was one of the original founders of IFPRI, and every year Bob Pfeffer puts together a list of 4 professors that he thinks are outside where IFPRI is currently looking at, brings in these extremely good professors in, and they give a series of talks on the areas that they're working on. It's a tremendous seminar series where we're having high-level professors come in, give us an idea of what's going on, and we actually might consider that as a new project in the next annual general meeting. We also bring in, around the areas that we're at, if we're in Cornell, we'll ask students from the maybe a couple 100-mile radius to please come and give a poster at our IFPRI session. And we do this for 2 reasons. Number one, we get to see more technology, but also we get to actually talk to some of the best students in the world, and this allows, once again, our members to be looking at who they should be hiring in the next hiring go around, and you're looking at some of the best students around. And finally, we have a business meeting, once again, to make sure that we're on budget and we're doing things right, to keep us all, walking in the right direction. Our meeting, as I said earlier, will be at Cornell University. It'll be from June 21st to the 25th. If you're interested in attending the meeting, please send me an email, and there'll be an email at the end of the this slide presentation, so I can send you out an invite. I think you would find it a very enjoyable meeting to come to the first one as a guest of IFPRI. What I'd like to give you is an idea of what is a deliverable that we actually can get out of these IFPRI meetings. And I have 3 examples here. One of the examples, excuse me here, I'm a little confused. We had a focused workshop on particle formation in 2013, where we were just looking at what are the new areas in particle formation that we should look at. This workshop that we have, this was a 2-day technical overview, breakout sessions where there was a lot of discussion about what was going on. We were actually looking to build consensus and look for program proposals out of this meeting. Now this was outside of our in the annual general meeting, but we felt it was important to have a focus session on particle formation because this was one of the areas that the members had come up with. Well, what we came out of this workshop is we defined basically 2 areas of interest, and one area was how do we know how to understand the fundamentals of particle processing when we don't have a standard particle. And this is a very interesting thought. How do you come up with a standard particle, and how do you then use it to understand the fundamentals? Because if you have a standard particle, you should be able to maybe test your fundamental theories a little bit better. We also came up with the idea of what are the best practices in particle technology, in particle formation. Is there a way that we can address that? And I'm going to talk about both of these as we go along. So what happened after our workshop? We were now into our annual general meeting. This was at Delaware in 2013. We wrote a project brief on the standard particle. We actually voted on it, and we decided that this was an important new area for us to be looking at. How do we understand the fundamentals of particle processing? And a standard particle was a good idea. We received 3 proposals in this area, and at our next meeting in Edinburgh, we voted and we decided to fund Professor Karen Hopgood at Monash on 3D printing of standard particles. So 3D printing is one of these really interesting areas right now. And Karen Hopgood, when we said, can you make us a standard particle? She said, why don't we make particles, not monolithic structures, but standard particles that are all the same size, all the same shape, And then we can now have a standard particle that we can look at and do studies on powder flow, on powder rheology, liquid rheology, breakage. And actually, we're very interested. She's going to be giving the first presentation on her results at this next meeting at University of Cornell. This, to me, was a great deliverable that came out of this. We identified an area, we wrote a brief on it, and we actually ended up with a proposal that might now give us the ability to understand the fundamentals of particle processing much, much better than we've ever thought of in the past. Excuse me. This year at our IFPRI meeting, right before the annual general meeting, we're going to have another workshop, and this year we decided that we would do one on predicting crystallization behavior. We've set this thing up. Neil George from Syngenta and James Lister from the University of Purdue are our workshop chairs, and you can see the list of plenary speakers that we have there and invited participants, and we think we've put together a group, a tremendous group, both industrially and academically, that will be looking at how are we going to come up with the new understanding of crystallization behavior. So this is a particle technology area that IFPRI has decided is important enough, the members decided important enough, let's spend some time and effort on this. Hopefully we will see the same outcome, a good idea that will come out of this, that we will focus our research efforts in a new brief and hopefully a new proposal. Very, very excited about doing this. The third area I'd like to talk about is we talked about best practices that came out of that workshop in 2013. And how do you actually talk about best practices? And in fact, industrially, how do you get together with a group of your competitors or people that are in an area slightly different and have meaningful discussions? Well, we actually struggled with the concept of how to do this, and one of our members, I believe it was Tim Bell from DuPont, said, why don't we just have a roundtable discussion, and I want to pick a topic, shear testing. Well, shear testing, understanding powder flow, dry powder flow, is one of those areas that is really a difficult area to understand. So this past January, after our winter business meeting, we took a half a day. We had, I believe it was about 13 of our IFPRI members got together, and Tim had put forth these 6-7 questions in his being prepared, and said, so why do you do flowability measurements? What devices do you use? Who conducts the test? What problems are encountered? What are the unmet needs in this whole area? And is this a topic for future IFPRI-sponsored R&D? Quite frankly, this was the first time I have been involved in a case where companies can talk, no proprietary discussions were done here, but can talk about what is important to them in this specific area. This was a discussion of best practices, and it was a tremendous discussion. Notes were written up, and I think more work will be decided based on this. It's one of the things that when you get these very smart people together, you can have some tremendous understanding of what's going on. I think people left there thinking, wow, I've learned something new. There's things that I can do better, and there's things that I need to improve. So the general conclusion is IFPRI puts in a very broad research portfolio. We're looking to serve a very diversified membership, as you saw. The projects must provide new relevant scientific knowledge. And this, once again, this is pre-competitive. So now it's up to the members to take this knowledge and find out if there's an advantage that they can make for themselves. The academic associates that we have, these are world-class authorities, and when they get into a room and they can all see what's important to industry, and we can talk with them, I think everybody goes home after these meetings so pumped up because they've had this opportunity to talk to some great academics, and some great industrial members. As it turns out, if you are an IFPRI member, you can't sit back and expect somebody to spoon feed this. What happens is the members are extremely active. So participation and discussion between the members, the contractors, the academics, our invited speakers is a tremendous part of this meeting. And in fact, you might go home all excited about having been at the meeting, and you probably go home extremely tired from having such an intense meeting. Finally, we like to consider that this is a consulting forum where you're talking to, once again, the best people in the world from an academic standpoint, from an industrial standpoint, and you can come out of this this meeting with much more information and insight than you've ever had before. And so my last slide is I'd like to thank you. I'd really appreciate it if you would contact me. I love to answer questions about IFPRI. I've been president for, I think it's going on 2 years now. I intend to do this as long as they'll let me. I love being in this area. Thank you very much.
Well, okay, great. Thank you very much.
There?
I am here. I just unmuted myself. Well, thank you. And so we did get questions in. So we have a Packers fan who wants to know, why don't you just use extruded plastics for standard particles?
We have a plastics fan.
No, Packers. Packers, Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, I know who that is. He's
Oh,
a rabble-rouser. He's a rabble-rouser. And why didn't we use extruded? I think the idea with the 3D printing that Karen was going to do is that we weren't just going to make spherical or acicular particles, but we were actually going to look at some very complicated shaped particles, and now look at that as our standard particle. So I think that the thought is that the 3D printing would give us the opportunity to make all types of different sizes and shapes and morphologies of particles. Great question, though.
Yeah, I think
from
those
a Packer fan.
I think those are good points. I will point out we can split the difference and use extruded plastics to feed the 3D printer.
There it is. There it is. I like that idea.
So everybody's covered there. Okay, well. Okay, someone asks, what can an associate member not do?
So an associate member doesn't vote, and that's primarily the only difference between a member and associate member. So when it comes to when it comes to deciding the new briefs, the associate member doesn't vote, but the associate member hopefully is expected and does contribute in the brief writing, in asking and campaigning very hard for their good projects that they put in. So it just comes down to the voting at the end of the day that the associate member doesn't get the opportunity to do.
Right. And so just by way of maybe repeating what you said, that once these projects are put up, they're put up to a vote of the membership, and the associate members at that point don't get to influence the process any further.
Correct.
Yeah. So we circle back to the 3D printing. What is the thought about making sufficient quantities for studies on 3D printing?
Once again, that's a great idea. So Karen Hapgood, the system that she has is a commercial system. I believe it's a Stratasys system for making particles, and I belive it was a. I just read the proposal last night to make sure that I understood it, but it looks like it's a 20-inch bed if I remember correctly. So if you're looking at 1 millimeter particles, in a 20-inch by 20-inch bed, you have an opportunity to make an awful lot of particles. So the idea is to make some significant amount of material so we can actually then pass them on to the other academics or members for testing. So the idea fully is to make enough to actually get something out of this and start looking at these fundamental properties.
Okay, great. Next question. All right. Yeah. So the next question is, will people here get copies of this presentation and recording? And the short answer to that is you can download them as soon as we get them put up. So I am recording the session, and I have a copy of Willie's slides. If you go to the HORIBA website, www.horiba.com/us/particle, and then on the left side you'll find a download center. I'll give you a link there. And so if you come back there and search in a couple days, you will find this webinar, both the slides and the video. IFPRI also has a website, as long as I'm doing the web thing. Is it ifpri.org, Willie?
It's ifpri.net, I believe.
IFPRI.
www.ifpri.net.
Okay, I will test that before I inflict it on the audience. Yes, you are correct.
Ooh, boy, that was a career-limiting answer if I missed it, wouldn't it?
Actually, someone else just told me it confirmed you were correct. Yeah. So, all right, we got two more questions. Can reports be shared internally beyond the IFPRI member?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so we are actually setting up and that's a wonderful question. We're actually setting up a new website that if you become a member, if we will actually set it up so all the individuals in your company can actually get onto that website and see all of the reports.
Yeah.
So, yes.
And at the Shear testing roundtable, I remember one of our members brought questions from other colleagues within the company, and I think we even had someone dial in just for that, one member.
Yeah, I think we had a couple people dial in. It's an important area to talk about, and
yeah,
you know, the idea is, and that's such a good question that person asked, is that it's important that not only the IFPRI representative actually get access to the IFPRI information, but the people in the company get access to it. It's the only way that it actually makes sense.
Yes, and it works in practice. Okay, another question. Are companies considering IFPRI membership allowed to visit the particle crystallization workshop as well?
You know, that's a great question, and the answer is yes. We do have a limited number of people that will be allowed at the crystallization workshop, but you know, that's something to have a discussion directly with me, and we'll see how we can work it out. But I would say, you know, in general, yes. I just have to make sure that the members get first crack at being at the crystallization workshop.
Okay, so Willie Hendrickson at avica.com. Okay, and all right, this is one for me. Are presentations for previous webinars on HORIBA's website available for participants? Yes. So if you go to the HORIBA website, you can see our previous webinars, primarily in the area of particle characterization, and if you register, you can download them and watch them to your heart's content. You can also subscribe to our email newsletter and learn about upcoming webinars, as we send out email a couple times a month with webinar reminders, and once a month chock full of particle characterization information. Okay, another question for Willie. What are the steps for new academicians to get involved and possibly propose areas of research to IFPRI? Do we need to become members first?
So that's another great question. We don't have academicians as members. The membership fees are, you know, beyond what an academic. Well, you know, that's interesting. We've never had, as an example, the University of Texas ask us to be a member of IFPRI. I think we would welcome it, but typically how academicians become consultants or actually participants with IFPRI is they make sure that their work is well known, the IFPRI members know it, and then the IFPRI members will actually recommend to the rest of the community, the IFPRI community, that we should have this person do a proposal or project. So it's usually academicians become members of IFPRI by invitation, and they're members of IFPRI so long as they're doing a project with us. It's an interesting thought, though, of having academicians also members of IFPRI. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, I think that's one. Yes, it is a very interesting thought. Okay, all right. Well, I think that we've about wrapped it up for time and so on. So I'd like to go ahead and thank you, Willie, for a great talk, and thank the attendees for listening, and for the good questions. In your chat box, there are various web addresses about where to find us, and well, bye for now. Okay.